Alright, so the build is going to start. If you guys have been following the channel, I did an unboxing of the SCX10 2. So now, without further ado, let's get cracking on this. Throw everything out, try to sort our bags as much as possible. I've built a lot of trucks, a lot of SCX10s, and I'm figuring that this here will be very straightforward. So first off is our axles. Get all our parts out. The finger's proving to get in the way quite a bit, but we'll try to manage. So first off is our diffs. These are conic cut, very strong. So we have 3 screws that are going into the diff and to the locker. Make sure to thread lock those. So now for the output shaft and the bearing, throw the output shaft in. Make sure to grease everything up and the diff will slide in. It also has 2 bearings on the outside to hold it. We have our diff cover. 4 screws gets that into place. So finish that up off camera, save ourselves some time. Now here we're off to the knuckles. So the C-hub, the shaft is going through, and now the knuckle, 2 screws, 1 up top and 1 below. That locks everything up. And now 1 underneath to tighten the C-hub. Rinse, lather, and repeat for the rear. The only difference is there's a lockout, no C-hub. So that screw in the base holds everything together. Mirror image of the front. Alright, so here we have our link mounts, upper and lower. 2 cap head screws on each side holds that into place. Alright, so axles are done. Now we're on to the links. So I'm just going to do one of these here. So I'm going to thread in the grub screw as far as we can into the link, or into the ball end, and thread the link through. Now I have the ball ends themselves, snap those into place. So now on to the steering links. We have a long and the short going to the servo horn, and the long going straight across to the opposite knuckle. And there we have the panhard bar for the 3-link setup up front. Alright. So now we have our 1 link, like I said, so it's a 3-link. So 1 link from the front all the way to the upper mounts, and then we have our 2 lower mounts. Alright, so finish that up. And we're on to the rear. So here we have our 2 upper links, the lower links. Again, the screws are quite long, so we're just going to start threading them in, and I'm going to tie everything up off camera. Throw the link back on there. Alright, so those are done. Throw that to the side and move off to the, I guess, my least favorite part of the build, shocks. E-clips go flying, shock oil everywhere. Nothing but trouble. Alright, so let's break everything off of the parts tree. Throw on the preload nut for the shock before it gets all greasy, because then you can't spin anything on. And the first part we're going to be building is the lower part of the shock. So we have 2 spacers, an O-ring, and then the cup at the end to close everything off. And here we have our plunger, snap on the E-ring to the shock shaft. The final E-ring there. I'm always scared they fly away. Thread it through. Get some oil in there. Work our bubbles through. This is probably the part that I hate. I have to sit there forever and leaking, yada yada yada. Alright, so let's throw the cap on. A little fake reservoir I won't be using, just putting it together to see how it looks. Ball end, shock, and retainer. We're done. Alright. Shocks are done. Now we're moving off to the fun stuff, the trans. Alright, so a little bit of a different setup here that I'm accustomed to. So we have a 3-gear setup in the trans. And then separate from that, we have our, I guess you call that, divorce transfer case. So you can see there, I'm building up the trans portion. Get the gears on. Now we're going to throw that into the case. So line our things up. Replace that drive pin because they always slide out. Quicker you can get this closed up, the better. So we're going to make sure to lube everything up. I do a lot of water running, so we want to make sure that it is thoroughly greased. So I'm going to butter her up good. Close up the trans. And we're done. So now on for the transfer case. Alright, so when you get that first gear on the shaft, throw that into the case so we don't fall apart. Same thing for the second one. And the third one's a tricky one, so that one's just going to float in there. You have to push it through the trans, drive pin, gear at the end, and then now we're good to close her up. So now onto the motor plate and our slipper clutch. It's a double pad on the slipper clutch here. Even though what's there should just be locked down. That's the way I do it. So a spring and then our retainer nut. Tighten that down as hard as you can. Make sure there's no binding and you're ready for the motor. So I'm going to check our pinion mesh already. Make sure we get as much contact as possible with the spur. I get some thread lock on our motor bolts. Throw those down. And we're on to the cover. 3 screws get that done. Alright, so now onto the drive shafts. So make sure we got our thread lock out. Get 2 long, 2 short drive shafts, front and rear. Get all the little burrs off. So now we're going to build the yoke. Put our drive pin through. We have a little retainer that slips up and over. Keeps it from popping off. Where is that? There we go. And now that just threads through the drive shaft. Might as well throw those on the trans now. So as you can see, I built off camera the long and short drive shaft. Long going to the rear. And short going to the front. So now we're done that. Start mounting off the post so we can mount the trans to the chassis. Now we have our lower chassis plate. 2 screws is going to get that tied in. The drive shaft keeps falling off. Alright, so now our battery tray slash servo tray. Put our battery strap across. Break off all the pieces from the parts tree. Alright, so hardware. So we have 3 retainer posts. It's going to allow us to mount that to the chassis as well as a servo mount. Or chassis mount, should I say. So the last one's there. Start getting the servo situated. Note the direction of that. The spline of the servo should be facing the front. A lot easier to fix it now while it's in hand versus trying to take it apart afterwards. So put the servo in. Our little servo wire retainer clips will lock everything down front and back. Now on for the shock hoops. Into the battery tray, 2 screws gets that done. Now we have our bumper mount. And as you note, we're going to be working on one side of the chassis. Makes things a little bit easier to work with. So now on to the rear. We have our shock hoop and our cross member. 2 screws there. And the same for our bumper mount for the rear. And now we have another cross member piece that's going along here. Get our trans in. So we have 2 long screws going into the lower plates. So now we have our side rail. We're going to have our ESC mounted on there, as well as our radio box, which is waterproof. Now onto our front axle. Get all our hardware out. This is going to be the trickier of the both to mount due to the panhard, as you can see referring to the book there. So we get our drive shaft into place. This is easier done before the links and the shocks are in. So here we have our lower links. If I could ever get that into place. Oh, my bad. That's where the the upper link goes. The lower links are into the outside of that plate, like that. There you go. So now panhard's mounted. We have a nice flex. Our third link, mount up here. And now get our shocks going. So one screw up top, and then in the link retainer at the bottom. Same on both sides. And for the easy one, the rear. So our upper links are going to the outer part of the skid plate, and the lower links are going to the inner part, closer to the drive shaft. As you can see up here, so the lower link, upper link, and now we're ready for some shocks. So one screw up top and one into the lower link retainer. We're done. Onto our electronics tray. So we have our ESC as well as the receiver. And again, not that it's not gonna hold it watertight, but with all the water running I did not trust the electronics box. So we're gonna balloon everything because that keeps everything dry. Alright, so get all our leads in. Double-sided tape. Throw that in there. And now we have our cover as well as the O-ring. Make sure that's nice and tight. And we have 4 long countersunk screws that are going to hold everything in there. Alright, so front bumpers. We have 2 set screws that hold that into place. Same for the rear. Cool thing about the rear though is we have the hitch. Looks very scale. So rear shock towers, body posts, front body posts. Now we're on to the rock sliders. Snap that off from that parts bag. Alright, so you get 2 of our longer screws. It's going to slide in underneath. Sorry, you can't see that there. Alright. You better look at it from here. So our hex, the tire, and a wheel nut. All our wheels are on. We got our body painted. Move on to the roof rack. You have 3 holes that I've used the body reamer to get at on each side. The grill portion is probably the coolest part of that. 2 screws each side will hold that together. Our mirrors, and that's the only accessories I'm going to put on because the rest of them are getting ripped off during the trail runs. So it is complete. There we have it in all its glory. Looks very good. I might trim a little bit more of the body to lower it up. You got a big gap in the wheel well, but I love the look. Orange gives it that rugged look, I think. Nice and supple suspension. Loving that hitch. I have to throw some decals on that body. So, you get a good look of it here. Right away, the first thing to notice, the trans. Super low and clean. Might even be able to rock that hard body Jeep that I had on there. Or for my other one anyway, should I say. Like I was mentioning, nice and supple suspension. Drive lines are almost flat. So no points of hang up. Rock sliders will push everything up and out of the way. Loving those new scale BF Goodrich tires. Nice red diff covers. Sure, there'll be a lot of upgrades for myself. I love doing that, but for now, I'm very happy with it. Been a while we waiting for a new SCX10. Very clean. Steering angle. Battery box, a little bit different. You know what I mean? A stand-up tray, or stand-up battery, should I say? But, yeah, that's probably the only thing I noticed on there that's a little bit out of the norm for me. Let's get this body back on. And hopefully next time you see it, full of mud, and maybe even have a light kit on there. So, guys, thanks for watching. Please thumbs up and subscribe.